December 11th, 2017, Independence, Missouri. Libby Caswell is found dead inside a roadside motel room. Within hours, her death is ruled a suicide. Case closed. But for her family, nothing about that conclusion felt right. They say the injuries don't match. The timeline does not make sense, and the people involved keep changing their stories. Today, we're examining a case that continues to divide opinion, where again, the official ruling says suicide, but others believe critical questions have never been fully answered. Today, we're covering the case of Libby Caswell. This is Missouri Mayhem, Mystery and Murder. I'm Megan.
And I'm Mindy. Thank you for being here with us. We seriously appreciate every single one of you.
And a big thank you to our listener, Abby G, for recommending this case, because both Abby and I happened to listen to an investigative podcast called What Happened to Libby Caswell. And we'll talk about that again a little bit towards the end of the episode. 8-episode podcast series. And after I listened to that, and then Abby reached out, I'm like, we've got to cover this case. Because this isn't just one case like this. This is very similar to Tanner Ward's case, which we covered earlier in the season, which also was deemed suicide very quickly. And where maybe the crime scene was not treated with respect or not conducted as a crime scene search. And yeah, this case touches also on another bigger question that Tanner's didn't touch on, which is when domestic violence is involved in a suicide ruling, or there's shown evidence that domestic violence took place before the supposed suicide, how should this be investigated? And how should these kind of deaths be investigated? Okay?
All right.
So, heavy case today, you guys. Definitely a warning, as usual, mayhem warning. We're going to be talking about suicide, specifically death by hanging, potential homicide, strangulation, those kinds of things. Now, we're just going to get right into it because a lot like Tanner's case, there are a lot of nuances and things about this case that we need to talk about and question, okay? So for context, though, as I stated, this took place in December of 2017, okay? And we've covered a couple cases, I think, in 2017 already. But the big thing to think about that happened in the world in 2017 that I think goes hand in hand with this case is the Me Too movement. #MeToo. And we know in 2017, a lot of, especially women, men too, but a lot of people started coming forward to share their experiences of abuse, rape, harassment, violence. And for the first time in 2017, a lot of these people were actually listened to and taken seriously, and action was happening. Now, with this Me Too movement came other questions about power, specifically men having power over women, accountability, how institutions, whether it's law enforcement or other entities, handle cases involving vulnerable victims. And yes, women, we're strong, we're amazing, we're equal in every way to men. But let's be real, we are vulnerable. And that's a sad thing. Also, at the same time, then, conversations start evolving about domestic violence. Advocates are pushing for greater awareness of patterns like coercive control, escalation, and warning signs. We're going to talk today and use the term non-homicidal strangulation, which we've talked about several times. We're also going to talk about hidden homicide. So when Libby Caswell's death is ruled suicide, this does not happen in like a vacuum. Our world is starting to question things more, look at things more closely. And everyday people will find out, like Cindy Caswell, Libby's mom, starts asking tough questions. So that's what we want to do here. We want to look closely at this case. We want to look at some of these questions that her family has. And we want to see, does this case need to be reopened? Should this case be reopened? And are there enough lingering questions to make that happen?
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about Libby.
Yes.
Okay. And, again, this is one episode, maybe about an hour, and that, podcast I listened to, it was 8 episodes.
So you kind of put this all into one episode?
Basically, yes, and so there's a lot to cover, but,
Yeah,
they did such a nice job on that podcast of really describing and talking about who Libby was as
sure.
a person. So, Libby was a daughter, a sister, a mother, a friend before, I found her name in that podcast. I didn't know anything about her, but she was all these things before. So, born in 1991,
Well,
she
and that's why we do this.
exactly, to honor these people and remember them. Libby was born in 1991, and she grew up in the Kansas City area her whole life, surrounded, by family, and they would describe her as affectionate, spirited, and she was deeply connected to the people she loved. And we're going to hear that over and over. Even through hard moments in her life, she made it priority to stay connected to the people in her life. She would do this by checking in, showing up at family gatherings, and even, when things were tough, trying to show up. She's known for remembering birthdays, sending messages, making sure people felt cared for that were close to her. And her mom said Libby's loyalty to family and her desire to keep those relationships intact, even during those hard points, says a lot about who she is and a lot about what she would or wouldn't do,
Yeah.
according to Cindy. Now, a family member said Libby had such a light about her. She loved deeply and always tried to see the good in people. As a mother, Libby's world centered around her son. Libby had Alex Xavier, also known as Zave by his family, and she gave birth to Zave when she was only 17. So, a lot going on at a very young age. And people said that from that point on, when she had Zave, he was her driving force in life. Everything she did was for him. They recall how she was so proud of him. She talked about him all the time, and she was really trying to build a life that could give him stability and love. I think for quite some time, they lived with her mother, her and Zave, off and on. She would celebrate his milestones. Her friends said she worried about his future and what his future was going to look like, and that she was very emotionally connected to him. And at the time of Libby's death in 2017, again, he's 4. And this is pivotal for Libby's family because they say her role as a mother is central to how they remember her and to how they understand what happened to her. And they say she's devoted, protected, and she lived for her son. And there's no way she would take her own life
Right.
and leave this world
With
with her,
him.
yes, with him here. That belief, of course, is a key part of why they continue to question the initial ruling. They argue that her deep commitment to Zabe does not align with that she would commit suicide. Now, to friends, Libby was sometimes loyal to a fault. And let's talk about that for a
Okay,
second.
yeah.
I think we've all been guilty of being loyal to a fault.
Yeah. So give me an example.
I think we've all stuck with that friend who's done us wrong and has caused us stress.
And you've forgiven him
And
like
you
17
forgive them and you
times.
think it's going to change and maybe I can help them or I feel this relationship's good enough or we've been in it long enough. I don't want to let it go when
Yeah.
really it's not good for you.
When in actuality, it's probably a very toxic relationship.
Right. And so we've all probably been in those. Sadly, Libby, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but this relationship that Libby ends up being in starts at a very young age, which I think complicates things
Mhm.
even more. Her friends said she would form very close knit friendships with people, and she would often put others' needs above her own.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was the kind of person that would call late at night. She didn't judge. She'd just sit and listen. They loved her laugh, her openness, and she just made anybody feel accepted. They said even when life became complicated for her, she still tried to show up and did her best to keep these friendships and connections. But Libby's just 21. She is a baby, really.
Yes.
I'm like 21, and her
Yes.
life has already presented her with quite a few challenges.
Yeah.
And one of those significant aspects leading up to her death, and one of the main challenges was her relationship with her on again, off again boyfriend and father of her child,
Mhm.
Devon Martin.
Okay.
So, to understand exactly what happened in those final weeks, days of Libby's life, we have to look at her relationship with Devon. Now, let me be clear, and I'm going to say this a couple times. He has never been charged with anything.
Okay.
As of today, He's never been charged with anything. So Devon and Libby met as freshmen in high school. We're talking about 14, 15-year-olds.
Yes.
So this is a relationship that started very young, and they remain involved off and on for the next roughly 6 years. And what, again, began as this kind of sweet teenage high school puppy love relationship changed to what family members and even advocates who have looked at her case, they say this relationship over a few years starts to evolve into a clear pattern of marked instability in the relationship, control on his part, and repeated allegations of abuse. And this is where I don't understand how this never comes into play in this investigation, what I'm getting ready to tell you. And how does it not?
Okay.
How do you not at least look at this closely?
Yeah.
Okay. So family members say there is a well-documented history of both physical and emotional harm in the relationship between Libby and Devon, much of which they believe, again, has not received adequate attention from law enforcement. So let's talk about some of these.
Okay, so documented history.
This is a documented history of things leading up to her death that had happened between her and Devon. Okay? To start with, one witness identified as Devon's stepfather reported that he saw Devon strangling Libby 1 week before her death. So Libby and Devon were living in Devon's stepfather's house. He let them come in. They were staying in a room. I remember this off the podcast.
Why did that fucker not report him?
Well, they interviewed him on this podcast, and he said, "Let me start by saying, I regret so much what I did after I saw what happened." He claims they were both being aggressive. He went in, he catches Devon with his hand around Libby's neck. They both start trying to make excuses. He kicks them out. He said, "I don't want any part of this crap. I don't know what you guys are doing, but get out of my house."
Who kicks who out?
Devon's stepfather.
Kicks Devon and
A week
Libby out.
before Libby dies, they get kicked out of the stepfather's home after he witnesses.
So she stayed with them another week after that.
Correct. And he regrets that. Devon's stepfather says, "I wish I would have helped Libby. I wish I wouldn't have ignored that." And that was a clear sign that something was up. So, yes, that's one. Family accounts include claims that Libby was also locked in a confined space by Devon at some point. That could be who knows what.
Yeah.
Was threatened with weapons, and even her car was shot with a firearm at one point. Okay, all very serious things. Not only did this stuff happen to Libby, but relatives say the harassment came to them too. Some relatives. He was constantly trying to get a rise out of her mom, family members, Libby. According to those close to her, Devon allegedly interfered with Libby's life so much, and she was trying to move forward and trying to reinvent herself, especially she wanted to get her GED. She'd had ZAVE at 17, hadn't graduated from high school. This was a goal of hers. Don't know exactly what he did, but according to family members, Devon created so many disruptions within Libby's life during this period of time. She could not keep attending her GED classes. I don't know if that had to do with supervision of ZAVE, what that had to do.
She had to quit going to classes.
Correct. He somehow got her
to not go
to not do that. Yeah, or had some part in that. Now, here's where I get very upset, and I got so upset when I listened to the podcast where they talked about this as well, because Libby Caswell says, "I called the police every time this crap was going down in my house. They were fighting, he was being abusive, he was stalking her, he was harassing us. Many times. However, they really are upset about how those calls were handled, because what happened was the Independence, Missouri Police Department ends up labeling the Caswell residence, Cindy's home, a public nuisance because she's calling too much. Quit calling us.
You're a public nuisance because you are caring about someone and reporting it.
And Cindy said what would happen is he'd come, Devon, he'd create a ruckus, he'd make threats, he'd do stuff. They'd call the police and then he'd run. So the police would come and he'd never be there. And they just kept saying. So the police said, "You don't quit calling us, we're going to prosecute you as a public nuisance."
My gosh.
So you have no one to turn to.
What do you
What do you do?
do?
Exactly. And that's what Cindy felt. Can you imagine how she felt? So she's trying to tell people this shit is going down. Help me. Advocates have also raised questions about the initial investigation after Libby's death, noting that despite all of this information, these reports, people witnessing him strangling her a week before, these incidents were not scrutinized or talked about at all, hardly, in early interviews. Crazy.
Wow.
Crazy. So according to public records and family accounts, Devon was already known to local law enforcement prior to Libby's death, and not just for his domestic violence towards her. He had reportedly been listed as a most active core offender by police in the months leading up to the incident because he had multiple arrests related to other things. Burglary.
What an award.
Yeah.
Hey, you get most active core offender.
Congrats.
Good job.
You're the MAC. You're the MACO.
You can say you did something in life. You're the MACO.
Yeah. So he's not only potentially abusing his girlfriend, he has committed burglary, assault, other disturbances, and he is a drug distributor, including meth and fentanyl.
Gosh.
Big time. Now, despite all this, again, despite the concerns raised by Libby's family and multiple advocates, which we're going to talk about in a minute, let's be clear, Devon Martin has never been charged in connection with her death, which is, okay, not charged, but he's never even been arrested, technically. I mean, he was, but he wasn't. So for Libby's loved ones, this relationship and all of these signs around it, of course, they can't see this as two separate things.
Yeah.
They don't see this as, oh, she was in an abusive relationship. Oh, and she committed suicide. No.
Right.
So did she commit suicide because of the relationship? Was it not suicide? Was it something else?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, again, Devon's role in this is not just because he's her boyfriend and they've potentially had some issues, but he makes the 911 call. Devon Martin makes the 911 call.
He's the one who made it.
Yes. So not only is he part of this situation in terms of he's her boyfriend, he makes the 911 call. So here we go. Ready?
Okay.
On December 11th, 2017 at around 8:00 p.m., Devon Martin calls 911 from the Sports Stadium Motel in Independence, Missouri. He says, I am in room 319 and I just discovered my girlfriend, Libby Caswell, hanging from the bathroom by my camouflage belt, Devon's belt. Immediately, his actions start to raise questions.
Yeah.
While still on the phone with the dispatch 911 caller, Devon leaves the motel.
He left her hanging?
Leaves her there in Libby's car. He leaves the hotel in Libby's car while she's supposedly dead in the bathroom. The call disconnects then less than 5 minutes later as he's in transit, leaving wherever he's going. Now, before leaving, a witness ends up coming forward saying that Devon told another man in the parking lot as he was leaving that his wife, which she wasn't his wife,
right,
had killed herself and asked that man to call 911 as well as he's leaving. Okay. Now, what happens next only adds to more confusion. So 15 minutes later, 8:15, first responders arrive and find Libby on the bathroom floor. Devon, again, nowhere to be seen. He later tells police that he freaked out after failing to find a pulse and left to go to his dad's house. It wasn't until around 10:45 p.m., almost 3 hours later, that he ends up coming to the Independence Police Department on his own accord, where he is arrested, but on unrelated warrants.
But they just needed a reason to arrest him.
Correct. So he is arrested, but not for that.
Right.
Now, emergency responders are at the motel, and despite their efforts, Libby was pronounced dead at the scene at just 21 years old.
Poor girl.
21. Now, in the immediate aftermath of Libby's death, investigators with the Independence Police Department, again, very similar to what happened at Tanner Ward's death scene, they begin processing the scene. And quickly, on their initial observations inside room 319, they classify her death as a suicide very quickly. Death by hanging, specifically. And notably, that determination, again, is made so quickly. And once a suicide determination is made, it significantly shapes how the rest of the
Oh, I
investigation goes.
bet.
We know that, as we saw with Tanner.
Yes.
The scope narrows, they get tunnel vision, they don't use resources that they could use potentially. They shift their focus away from any potential outside involvement to nope, it's just this one person. In Libby's case, no arrests were made, no suspects were formally identified. Nothing,
Nothing.
nothing. So that means this investigation doesn't move forward as a criminal case. It's suicide. Shut, closed, done. Now, concerns raised by Libby's family. Go Cindy Caswell. Very quickly, Cindy's like, no, I am not taking the suicide.
Right. We're going to look into it more.
Yes. No. So Cindy and others, again, we'll talk about here in a minute, they end up going to the Jackson County prosecutor's office pretty quickly after this happens and is ruled suicide and said, you guys need to look at this again. We're asking for a formal review. I'll say Jackson County said, okay, we'll look at it. After examining the available evidence, what would include supposedly, I need to quit using that word because I say it wrong.
You do not. You say it just fine.
And including, they claim, police reports, witness statements, forensic findings, and the prosecutor's office says, you know what? There's insufficient evidence to file criminal charges here. Now, the way that's worded is kind of important because insufficient evidence doesn't mean investigators are saying nothing strange happened.
Yeah.
They're just saying there's no evidence to prove that a crime happened with what they're looking at. Again, though, did they really analyze the scene? No, they didn't think it was a crime scene in the typical.
So they didn't look at it that
So they're
way.
not gathering stuff they should be. They're not
Right.
taking the evidence in they should. Now, again, this is tough for Libby's family. They're like, now we've had a second ruling that this is suicide, and we still don't believe it. And they're saying, look, people, come look at all these things that are not answered, all these questions, all these things that have happened prior. And let's look at the crime scene because there's a lot of things happening in that room that were not taken into account that could have played a part in this. Okay. So let's look at the crime scene.
All right.
Room 319 at the Sports Stadium Motel in Independence. Now, just like it sounds, the Sports Stadium Motel did not have the best clientele. I'm just going to be honest. And
kind of like rent for an hour type of thing.
Correct. This is a place where people could come and go often without being questioned.
Paying cash.
Use an anonymous name. Don't, no questions.
For sex, drugs.
Rock and roll, whatever.
Rock and roll.
It's yes. And so, and I'm going to be honest, it sounds like Libby and Devon were struggling with some drug issues at this time. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be, that they're not, that Libby, just because drugs are involved or someone who's vulnerable, or that doesn't mean it shouldn't be investigated. That we should not put more time into this.
Because a lot of people mess up.
Yes. And she's 21. She had a baby when she was 17. The girl's just trying to figure her life out. So here we go. We're at the Sports Stadium Motel. According to police reports, Libby was found in the bathroom area of the room. She had a belt around her neck, which investigators determined had been used as a ligature. Okay. And we know a ligature is basically that loop.
But that belt was able to lift her up?
Well, again, we're going to have a lot of questions here. Now, how did she hang herself in the bathroom? Well, according to police and Devon, the belt was supposedly attached to the door or door frame in some manner, leading investigators to conclude that she had died by hanging.
I do not understand.
But this is what they call a partial hanging, because Libby was found slumped against the bathroom door to the point investigators and Devon had trouble opening the door. Her body, so she was not free hanging, which is called a complete hanging. She was what they would have called either, a full hanging is where someone's completely gravity lifted off the ground. Partial is where someone ties something to something and uses their body. They may still be on the ground, but they force themselves to hang them. You know what I'm saying?
Jeez.
Yeah. Or they use it's considered partial. So they're trying to determine, like, is this a partial hanging? Is this a full hanging? Was she hanging and fell in front of the door? This isn't making sense. And Libby is not a big person
Okay.
either. She's a small woman. So a lot of questions here. At first glance, again, officers are like, this looks like it's suicide. But let's talk about the forensic. Now, people started getting involved. Cindy, she hit the pavement and she got some really good independent experts and advocacy groups to back her. And one of those individuals was a well-known forensic doctor named Dr. Bill Smock. And Bill looked over all the information in this case. And he said there are so many inconsistencies in the physical evidence that do not align with homicide, or excuse me, do not align with suicide. Like, he quickly saw things that were like, hold on, this should have been looked at much further. Here are some of the things. Let's start with the ligature marks. One of the most debated elements is the mark found on Libby's neck.
You say that singular mark.
Well, in most hanging, experts expect to see what they call an inverted V shape on the neck rising toward the point of suspension. So you can picture that, I mean, gravity takes over and it pulls the neck and makes that mark.
Yes.
Now, in Libby's case, reviewers don't describe the mark as an inverted V. It is more a circumferential, I think that's circumferential. It's basically more in kind of a half moon instead of a V, which says, and they said it looked like a complete circle around her neck, which if she's being hung, that should not be the case. The back of her neck would typically not have marks on it.
And it was all the way around.
They said it looked like a complete circumferential mark around her neck. This pattern is definitely common with strangulation, not hanging.
Yeah.
So could she have been strangled?
Yes.
Again, some experts also noted they thought they could see multiple marks, suggesting more than one application of pressure. Did someone strangle her and then attempt to hang her and stage it as a suicide?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys, this stuff is suspicious. Independent forensic reviews of the autopsy findings have highlighted many other questions, including a bruise on the back of Libby's back, that investigators with the Alliance for Hope International, which is a group that Cindy teamed up with, they said this bruise on her back potentially resembled a footprint, which could have meant she was being held down while being strangled.
Oh my gosh.
Scratches and bruising, her neck, chest, arms, all associated with defensive actions. How do you not look at that? And thirdly, and I think pretty telling, broken fingernails.
Like some of them were
Again,
broken.
defense actions, or was she attempting to pull something away from her neck as she was being strangled?
Yes.
Again,
It sounds like a fight.
It does. And just wait, I'm just getting started. The condition of the motel room itself has also been closely scrutinized. Libby's body was found positioned against the bathroom door in a way that many people say made it very difficult to open, and some experts believe this was intentional to try and stage and reinforce that she had hung herself. So is that possible? Could someone set up a body to where it was against the door and you had trouble getting in and stage that and get out and close the door? I think so.
I think so too.
I think so.
Very carefully.
Yes, I think that can happen. The room also showed signs of disorder, like a struggle had ensued. Clothing, personal items all over the room. There are also questions about the door lock. Devon Martin tells investigators he locked the door using a push button mechanism, but when others reviewed the crime scene photos, many said that is not the type of lock that was on that door. So that's a lie.
Okay.
Now, what that means, taken together, all these details definitely should and did raise concerns for Libby's family. And independent investigators are like, this is crazy that they have not reopened this and looked at this information. Again, ongoing debate about whether the original ruling tells the full story. Was room 319 the site of a straightforward suicide? as determined. Is it possible the scene was staged?
I don't think she would have had a struggle and then committed suicide.
Right. Well,
Do you
and
know
I'm
what I mean? Like, mess up the to make it look like I mean, it's a suicide.
and
That's what
of
it looks like.
and I don't know. They never were able to definitively say either, like, how she would have hung herself from that bathroom
I
door,
don't understand that at
like,
all.
how that happened. They never were able to say that. Like, was it a partial hanging? Was it a full hanging and she fell? Was it they were never able to give those details. Is this murder? That uncertainty and the lack of answers is what keeps this case in the spotlight, just like Tanner Ward. Don't you see how these
Oh,
cases,
yes.
oh, you're just like so many things that,
So many questions.
yes. Now, when you step back and look at this case, one thing stands out. Well, not one, many, but one
Yeah.
thing that we haven't talked about that is a huge thing is the timeline. Okay. Like, in what order of events did things happen? What happened before this went down? Again, where did Devon go and what happened after? Because in any death investigation, this is what anchors the story, the truth, hopefully. And it tells you who was there, when things happened, what could have happened, what couldn't have happened. Well, we only have one person to depend on for our timeline. And who do you think that is?
Devon Martin.
Devon Martin. We have one person.
Because he was the only one with her that day.
Correct. He is the only person that we know of for sure that was with her that day. By all available accounts, Devon was with Libby inside room 319. He is the last person to see her alive on December 11th, 2017. He is the one who says he discovers her, and he's the one who makes the 911 call. How do you not thoroughly investigate that person?
Yeah.
911 call, I discovered her, last person to see her alive. According to his statement, this is what Devon says happened. He fell asleep inside the motel room, and Libby was still there. He wakes up later, goes to the bathroom, and there she is unresponsive, saying she had used his belt to hang herself.
She's told him that.
Well, he's seeing the belt, and he says she hung herself. I found her. She hung herself with my belt.
Oh, I thought he said that she was saying, "Hey, I just tried to hang myself with your
No,
belt."
like he says, my belt's around her neck, which to me is also suspicious. It's
Yes.
your fucking belt.
Yeah, like she's gonna grab your belt and go hang herself with
Yes.
it.
Yes. No, this doesn't make sense. So,
No.
again, around 8 p.m., he says he called 911. Of course, that's documented. And that version of events now becomes the foundation of Libby Caswell's timeline and her death, all based on what Devon Martin says. Now, over time, this timeline becomes very convoluted and many questions.
That's where things start to get complicated.
Very, because as more details start to emerge in this case, the witness statements, what Devon's saying, how he acted, this shit's not lining up.
No.
And it's starting to create a wonky timeline. In fact, there are two accounts in particular that stand out to this timeline that Devon does not include the information. And I think it's very suspicious. Okay, again, raising serious questions about what happened leading up to her death. The first account is called the Please Stop Hurting Me account, which you can already tell does not sound good. A man staying in room 320.
Next door.
Next door. And we all been in motels or hotels, very thin walls. You can hear everything. He tells investigators he was awakened by loud noises coming from room 319. He heard banging, arguing, and what sounded like a physical struggle between a man and a woman. Most notably, this person says he heard a woman cry out very distinctly, "Please stop hurting me." He estimates this happened 20 minutes before police arrived.
So he called the police when he heard all this going on?
No.
What?
He just knew, I heard that 20 minutes later, oh, fuck, the police are over there.
So someone else had called the police?
Yeah, Devon.
Because of what was going
Devon.
Oh, Devon had called the police.
Now, this is not aligning at all because Devon claims, I'm asleep. I wake up, she's dead. Well, this guy says 20 minutes before you called 911, some shit was going down in your room and I heard it.
Yeah.
So this is not lining
I wish
up.
that guy would have called the police.
Well, just wait. He does. Next account, the prior knowledge timeline. Years later, which is frustrating. Witnesses decide to come forward
Yeah.
years later. Additional witnesses come forward with claims that, again, complicate the timeline that Devon has set forward. A man named Tommy Basler said he saw Devon on the day Libby died at Devon's father's house. This would have been the morning of December 11th. Devon doesn't call 911 till 8 p.m. Remember that. Tommy says, I saw Devon at his dad's house on that morning. He said 10 hours before he made that 911 call. 10 full hours. And Devon told him that morning that Libby had already hung herself.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it take years to report that? Again, not only does this Tommy guy say that, but Devon's dad, whose house he was at, Henry Martin, backs up that account and recalls a similar conversation early in the day. Now, okay, so then that would contradict what the neighbor said then.
Yeah.
Because the neighbor's claiming Libby's still alive 20 minutes before 8. So we've got a lot of conflicting things. And if these statements are accurate, again, if either of them are accurate, they conflict what Devon said. Okay? So there are many concerns, of course, about how witness statements were handled in this.
Okay.
The neighbor in room 320 who says, I heard all this.
Yes.
I heard, please don't hurt me. Well, officers said he was impaired when they came to the
Well,
scene.
he may have been, but he's not making that up.
Why would he make that up? Well, he's impaired. He's not a reliable witness. And they never brought him in for a formal
And
fucking
he heard it all.
interview.
He heard it all.
That is crazy to me. There is also no clear record that investigators attempted to even verify Devon's timeline with his dad during that
It's
initial.
like they just let him go.
They just said, nope, suicide. We're not going to spend
Does he
money on
have a
this.
dad that's a mayor or something?
Definitely not. I think that was part of the problem. The people they hung out with
Yeah.
didn't want to get in trouble because they'd already been in trouble with the
Yeah.
law. You know how that,
Mhm.
you hear about that. But how frustrating. I mean, they literally, it's like with Tanner. They said, nope, we don't want to spend any money on this, any more time.
Suicide.
This is easy to just wrap up and put a bow on.
When they know it's not true.
Exactly. Now, again, these reported witness statements, they have not resulted in any criminal charges. They've not been proven in court. They're just all technically hearsay, but enough hearsay to me that it introduces many inconsistencies. And those inconsistencies in the timeline to me say everything. Because if you don't have a clear timeline and that timeline has been changing over the course of years, that shows a problem, I would think. So lots of unanswered questions that I don't know that Devon even ever had to answer. For instance, what happened in the room exactly before this? You say you were sleeping, but why is the room destroyed?
Right.
Do they have drugs in their system at the time? He says he was asleep. How long were you asleep? You didn't hear anything? I guess if he's on drugs, he may not have. He could have been passed
Was
out.
he staging the place to make it look like a robbery?
Right.
On drugs?
What is he doing? So many crazy things and not knowing what exactly happened inside that room. Now, when someone is the last known person with a victim, their account carries the most weight, as we know.
Yeah.
And they're typically the number one suspect until they can be ruled out.
Mhm.
And I don't feel like police ever officially ruled him out, ever. And there's many reasons why Devon Martin remains as the central figure in this case. Last person to see Libby, discovered the body, made the 911 account. His account forms that official timeline, and his accounts have changed over time, as well as many other people. To me, if that's not a reason to just re-interview and re-examine.
Yeah.
And again, he's never been convicted or arrested of anything. So everything hinges on whether or not Devon Martin's telling the truth. That's what it all hinges on.
And I just don't feel confident that he is.
And it's the mother of his child. The mother of his child. Now, you guys, I'd like to say that this case has moved forward and we're seeing some progression and it might be reopened. Sadly, nearly a decade after the death of Libby Caswell, her mom is still fighting every single day. She refuses to let Libby's story end with a ruling that she says is wrong. She said, I will not let my grandson grow up to believe that his mom left this earth on her own accord. Not true. What began as grief has grown into this full-scale movement that Cindy has created called Justice for Libby. And like I said earlier, she has teamed up with the Alliance for Hope International, which is a well-known, basically abuse type
Yeah.
group. Their mission's clear. Cindy says, I just want one thing: overturn the ruling of suicide and reinvestigate it as a homicide. If at
Yeah.
the end you still come up with that, then I don't know that
But
she's.
do it again.
But do it again, please. Same with Tanner. Just reopen it.
Yeah.
Look at it one more time. Okay, you guys, as of May 2026, so right now, the Independence Police Department continues to maintain their stance. Libby's death was suicide.
Okay.
And again, the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office reviewed it in 2023, and they say the same thing. But Cindy, and she's getting more and more advocates behind her, they argue the key evidence has been overlooked here, including Libby's documented history of domestic violence. The scene itself shows signs of staging, and independent forensic reviews by Dr. Bill Smock and many others have pointed to multiple ligature marks and injuries that are inconsistent with suicide and consistent with hidden homicide.
Hidden homicide.
And we're going to talk about that. Hidden homicide right now. In recent years, Cindy has not only been fighting for Libby, but she's also helping others fight. Cindy is now pushing for a legislative change, supporting a measure called Senate Bill 1550, and it's modeled after what's called California's Joanna's Law. And basically, this law aims to require that any death very quickly or initially ruled as a suicide but involves a man or a woman that has a known history of domestic violence in their life, that this has to be treated with suspicion and investigated thoroughly.
Okay.
Great law.
Yes.
So this would prevent then police doing that.
Suicide.
We want to go home at 5 tonight. So we're going to,
right.
And so, and this is where we get into hidden homicide, because Libby's case is now being used as a teaching tool.
Okay.
There is a nationally recognized training program out there called the Hidden Homicides course. Hidden homicide, of course, is where offenders try to stage a suicide when they've basically strangled their partner.
Okay.
Typically, it's with strangulation. It could be with a weapon.
That makes sense.
Yes, but basically, they try to make it look like suicide.
So I think Tanner Ward was also a hidden homicide.
Absolutely, but not dealing with domestic violence, something else. And so her case, this hidden homicides course, they use these law enforcement officers to help others better understand how domestic violence deaths can be misclassified or staged.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. Law enforcement people are hearing more about this.
That's great.
Now, in December of 2025, marking 8 years since Libby's death, Cindy held a press event at the Eastern Jackson County Courthouse, and in front of media and many supporters, she said, "All I want is transparency. Please tell me what has been done. Why aren't you investigating it? And please, why can we not have a new investigation? Why won't you admit that the first investigation was deeply flawed?"
Yeah, if one of you had a child that we were looking for right now, I guarantee you wouldn't be sitting on your ass right now. You'd be helping.
Yes. So she's just saying, please, I'm not asking you to do, to make anything
having
up.
to beg.
Yes, and you should not have to do
how awful after what she's been through.
Exactly.
They should just be on it.
The movement continues to grow for Libby. If you're interested in knowing where Cindy's at with this and how things are going, she has started a Facebook page called Justice for Libby, Libby, and it gives updates about the case, any legal developments, and she sometimes holds rallies. Again, she's not just supporting her daughter, but she's trying to help others too. And for Cindy, this isn't about the past. This is about accountability and answers. And this family deserves to have those answers.
I mean, she's gone. We know that, but we need answers. What happened to her?
That mom cannot rest her head until she knows exactly what went down in
there's
that
probably
room.
a part of her that knows she may never know. And that in itself is just
Torture.
torturing. Yes.
As mentioned at the top of the episode, this case gained a lot wider attention in the last couple years or year or so because of that investigative reporting podcast called What Happened to Libby Caswell. If you're interested in that, it's done by the journalist Melissa Jeltsen. So if you're like, man, I want to know more about this, pretty much on any podcast platform, What Happened to Libby Caswell.
Yeah. 8
episodes, very interesting, crazy, sad. Also, Local Kansas City news outlets like KSHB 41, the Kansas City Star, continue to report that they feel like this case showed witness inconsistencies. The investigative procedure is being questioned by the Independent Police Department, and others are also saying, open this for re-examination.
Re-look at
Yeah,
this.
so it's not just Libby. Others see this. What happened to Libby Caswell isn't just one family's fight. I mean, this highlights a much larger issue. Well, to start with, we have the issue of this quick jump the gun, everything suicide. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Tanner, Libby, these going to these scenes and claiming that and not really
It
investigating.
would be so much easier. It was just a suicide.
Right. You don't have to do this, and we don't have to waste time doing this
Yeah.
and this. Well, that's a problem in itself. But Libby's case, as we've said throughout this, also highlights domestic violence. Across the country, advocates and experts have warned that cases involving a known history of abuse are often misclassified, especially when the scene appears at first glance to point to suicide. But domestic violence doesn't always end that way, and most often it doesn't. It can involve coercion, staging, patterns of harm that they don't know about that have been happening for months, years. And these need to have a more specialized investigation done. People who are knowledgeable about things like hidden homicide, cases where the cause of death may not match the underlying reality of abuse. Okay. Now, once a death is officially ruled suicide, like we said earlier, that shapes everything. Because in this case, new or previously overlooked evidence is never examined. Expert reanalysis of forensic findings, they have all this information, nowhere to give it or to leave it or to, you know what I'm saying? They have all this, and the door's closed on it because of the suicide ruling. Legal approval and public pressure, all this stuff is still not getting this case reopened. And it blows my mind how all of that can be happening and nobody wants to take a look at it. Um, it doesn't, once a case is labeled suicide, it doesn't just end. It can close doors for the family, is what it does. It closes those doors. And this case officially remains a suicide determination. But that has not changed, even with renewed scrutiny, forensic challenges, and public advocacy led by Cindy. And what this case ultimately shows is how complex and how final a suicide ruling can be, and getting it reopened is almost impossible. And I bet there are hundreds of cases like these around the world where families are begging to have suicide.
Sorry, it was suicide.
Yeah. They're like, no, 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 no. So as of right now, I'm sorry to say, her case is still closed as suicide. But Cindy, you're a badass. Keep pushing, keep going. That's what we want to do by telling you guys this case today is just get Libby's name out there. You guys, we've got a question. We shouldn't sit by idly and be
Just
told,
accept.
Right, the police said so that's what it is.
Yeah.
No, okay? In a respectful way, we've got to know how to continue to keep these cases at the forefront. So, Mindy, do you mind saying a prayer for Libby's family, her friends, Zave, her mom?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just want to come to you on this Monday, and we just want to pray for Libby's family, her friends, for Zave, her son, um, excuse me, and for all that happened to her on that dreadful day. And Lord, we just hope that you can open some windows and some doors here and perhaps let someone know how to open this case up to give her some justice. And also, Lord, we just want to pray for all our listeners today. If they're having a bad day, just that you'll be with them as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Y'all, we're not here to make legal conclusions. We're not here to try and override official findings. We're here to continue to ask questions, to examine what's known, and to pay attention to what still doesn't add up in this case. To continue to keep Libby's name out there and to continue to push for answers because they deserve answers. At the end of the day, this is more than a conclusion. It's about remembering Libby, This isn't about like, okay, is it suicide or homicide? This is about Libby, a
Mhm.
real human being,
Yes.
a mother, a daughter, a friend, and making sure that the questions being asked aren't forgotten and stay in that light. So that's why we brought you this case today. And again, thank you, Abby, for bringing it to our attention.
Yes, and thank you for being here with us today and remembering Libby Caswell. If this episode touched your heart, please share and review so more people can learn about this case.
And so we can continue to advocate for Libby, Tanner, and any other families that are out there struggling with a suicide ruling when they truly believe it's not the case. We appreciate all of you. We hope you're having an amazing day. And don't forget, stay safe, stay kind, and stay curious. This has been Missouri Mayhem. I'm Megan.
And I'm Mindy,
Missouri, you bring the mystery.
and we'll bring the mayhem.
Peace
Peace
out.
out.